Hi, welcome to our show today. I'm joined today by my co-host Susan Bainbridge and our special guest today, Kymberley Clemons-Jones. We come to know who we are by the images that are portrayed to us in society. Some of those images that are portrayed have to do with what the media says about us, whether it's television, the newspapers, or even social media. We come to know and understand who we are. And if we hear good things about us, we grow up learning that we are valued by society, that what we say is important, and that what we do is important. But if we hear negative things about us, sometimes we turn that inside, and we grow up thinking that we are not worthy and we're not wanted. Our guest today is going to talk about a project that she is the founder and the director of called the Wanted Project. And the reason why we're talking about that is because the Wanted Project specifically deals with helping young men of color know that they are wanted. Not just that they're wanted by the police when they're walking down the street and they're not doing anything to harm anyone, but they will get profiled anyway, not just because they're wanted by them, not because they're wanted by other people in their society who might want to do them harm. For instance, if they're growing up in a society that is filled with violence, but they are wanted because they are indeed worthy and in need of love and capable of giving love and living life in a way that brings out the very best in who they are. So the first part of our show, Kymberley will talk to us about the Wanted Project. But the second part of our show will deal with what do you do when tragedy strikes? How do you bounce back from that? How do you continue to keep your faith and move on beyond staying in that place of trauma and sadness and grief around whatever that experience has been? How do you restore your life? So I'm so excited today to have Kymberley with us. I want to tell you a little bit about Kymberley before fully getting into our conversation today. But Kymberley, KC, as she's widely known, is the founder of the Community Healing and Caring Center Incorporation. And it's a nonprofit organization that focuses on family cohesion, community building, and restoration. The Wanted Project, W-A-N-T-E-D. It's a mentoring program for young men 12 through 18 years of age, and it flourishes in Valley Stream, New York, and so we're really excited that she came from New York to be with us today, but also in Ghana, West Africa. We are super excited to hear about this program today, so I would encourage you, if you're looking at this on YouTube, that you make sure that you share this particular program with young men so that they will know about this project. And even if there isn't a Wanted Project in your area, they will know that they're wanted and maybe someone will start one in the area. So Kymberley, KC, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited that you are here. And Susan and I are really anxious to learn a little bit more about what you do. We know a lot about what you do in terms of the Wanted Project, but I'd like for you to tell us about what is the Wanted Project all about?
Well, the Wanted Project started in March 2011. My son, who was then 16 years old, was on his way home from high school, walking home to our neighborhood and to our home, and he was attacked by 5 youth. He usually got a ride home from me, but I was in Manhattan that day doing a workshop, and so I'm there, came home, I was there before him, and he runs into the house. And literally his mouth was bleeding profusely, and he just kept running around the house saying, I should have known better, I should have known better, I should have known better. And so when I finally calmed him down, he told me that he was attacked by 5 youth. They hit him from behind with a brick, and they busted or broke one side of his jaw, fractured one side, and the trajectory broke the other side as well. And so after 15 minutes of him running around the house and then telling me the story, he said he was attacked from behind with the brick. And when he was down, they stole his book bag and his books and his watch and other things. He took him to the hospital, and he was taken to the children's hospital where he was hospitalized, and he had to get both sides of his jaws fixed in surgery. And when he was in surgery, I was praying, because that's what I do. I have to go inside when tragedy strikes. And I heard the Spirit of God. You know, I kept saying, you know, our children are wanted. There had been some other things in our neighborhood where there was police violence against youth. In fact, his attack by those youth was about the third, and there will be one more after that in the neighborhood. And so I said, you know,
by these same youth?
We don't know.
You don't know.
We don't know. More than likely, yes. And I said, these children are wanted. Our boys are wanted. It's like they have a target on them. And I'm a faithful person, and I believe in God, and I felt like the Spirit of God said.
I think we should also say that you're a minister too. So
yes,
that, you know, but not that you wouldn't be faithful otherwise.
Right,
but I think that is significant, because one of the things that I'm hearing even before you're talking about that is that even when tragedy happens, we can still listen to the voice of God and sacred speaking to us, because, you know, as a parent, I'm sitting here wondering, you know, your child is coming in with blood, and, you know, but you'll talk about that the second half with how you dealt with that. But so
I heard in my you know, inner voice, I heard, we want them to know. I want you to tell them that they are worthy, accountable, named, thankful, empowered, and determined.
Wow.
And that's when the Wanted Project started.
So can you say that again? Because I'm sure.
Wanted stands for worthy, accountable, named, thankful, empowered, and determined. And literally 2 weeks after my son was home from the hospital and recuperating, we started the Wanted Project with 15 young men, ages 12 to 18. And we've been going strong ever since.
How did you get these young men to come?
The first class started off with friends of my sons and their friends. And they were more than willing to do it. Everyone was so upset. And they knew that we needed to do something to teach not only my son, who was the victim, but those sons of ours who are out there in the world who might do violence against another person, that they are indeed wanted, and they're not wanted for these bad reasons that we see all the time on television. They're wanted because they're a part of our society. They are loved by their parents and their friends, and we want them to know that they are worthy.
Do you think that because you're battling society, you're battling all the images that they get about who they are?
Yes.
And how has it been for you to really try to reframe what society says about them?
Well, you know, I have help, which is great. I thought it was very important that these young men have male role models. So usually I'm behind the scenes getting things done while we invite a facilitator in. It's usually a male. It actually has always been a male up until recently. And so they come in with their stories of growing up. What they did, what they might not should have done, and they stay on topic. So each week is an acronym for worthy. So for instance, for worthy, a facilitator would come in regardless of their background. We've had doctors, lawyers, youth workers. We've had politicians come in, and they talked about what worthy meant to them. And what's really important, especially with boys, is the interaction. I have never been so impressed with young men before, because I've always just worked with women and young women. We believe that black boys can't sit still. We believe that, you know, they won't listen. But what we have to realize is, you know, if they're in church, they're meant to stay still and quiet and just conform. In class, it's the same way. And so I didn't think that these boys would engage with the facilitator. Oh my goodness, they are so engaged with the facilitator. They are talking back and speaking, and so I've never been more impressed. And
well,
you know,
I think that
children.
gets to a larger issue, though, too, which we can't get into on this show. But you know, when we think about school systems and how school systems teach our children, and they say that they can't sit still and do the work, well, it's really about engaging them where they are. And if you give them something that they find exciting, they're going to listen and they will do what you ask them to do.
Absolutely.
Now, I wonder, well, in fact, I think I already know the answer to this, but you said that you have men who come in and mostly do the work. But even though your program is for children of color, your presenters are not always people of color. Is that correct?
They're not. Actually, the gentleman who wrote our curriculum is Caucasian, and he has attached, God has been inspiring this whole program. People are coming out of the woodwork saying, I want to help. And so he was a friend of my sister's, is a friend of my sister's, and he came in and he last year wrote our curriculum for us. He was a facilitator. In fact, he lived in Valley Stream as well. And so it's wonderful to see our boys. He's out in the park with his daughter, and our boys are saying, Dr. Mike, Dr. Mike. And so it fills not only the boys, but it fills the volunteers and the mentors as well. And so, yes, this is open. It's for boys of color, but it's really open to everyone. Students who will come, facilitators who will come and just bring that word and that affirming word to them. All are welcome.
Well, because I think the truth of the matter is all of our kids really need to know that they are wanted because of the messages that they get. But having said that, I think because of kids of color, they know what wanted means. If you see the poster and it says wanted, they know. It's like Michael Moore did a film a few years back where he was referring to Columbine, and he did an interview with someone from Colorado, and in it he talked about how much the word suspect, you know, whenever you hear suspect and there's an African American man or young man there, and the way he did it with just showing suspect, 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 and he kept showing different black faces and different reporters saying it. When you hear these messages, that's what you grow up thinking, and you think, this is what people expect of me, so I should conform to it. But another part of your wanted piece is, so you have the worthy, but you also have accountable. So can you say a little bit about that piece?
And if I may say about the wanted poster, I literally, when God gave me that message, I literally saw the wanted poster. I did. Yes. And back in, you know, in the cowboy days, you would see the gruff, you know, bearded, you know, really gruff man on it. And now you see our black young man. So it's
and that's pretty sad.
Yeah.
That is absolutely,
absolutely,
really, really sad. Before you talk about the accountability piece, though, I am just continually amazed because what we do all the time is to talk about this sacred piece. And I want our viewing audience to know that it is the sacred piece that's going to always speak to you and will speak to you in your time of need if you are open and avail yourself. Because you could have said at that moment, I don't want to hear that.
Absolutely.
My child is lying here sick. I don't want to hear that.
Yes.
But it birthed.
And quite frankly, as a pastor, I tell people all the time, this is what you should do. This is what you should do, right? And so I was not aware of what I was doing. And luckily, that's what I did. I went inside and I did ask God. Sometimes you don't, until your faith is tested, you really don't know how you're going to react to something, especially when it comes to your children. And I surprised myself that happened. And after, you know, the message of wanted was sent, I said, okay, let's do this.
Okay. So I'm going to, I want you all to help me to remember this later, because I do want to ask you about your husband's response as a male, but I want you to continue with your acronyms for wanted, because I want to be sure that we get that in. So tell me about the accountability.
So we'll start with accountability. How important it is. I always tell my kids how important it is that they be responsible for something else or somebody else. And I think it's almost like having a schedule for children. Children don't want to be on a schedule, but they thrive on a schedule. It's the same thing with accountability. So we have facilitators come in. They talk about what it means to be accountable to your parents, your school, your younger siblings, maybe to a summer job or after-school job, and really what that means. I see it played out. My son plays drums, and he was taught by his brother. So when his brother went away to college, he sat with my youngest son, who just decided one day that he wanted to play drums, and was really, really good at it. And they sat together, and he was the mentee. And now there's another young person who coming up in the church who wants to play drums, and my son sits with him, and I could see the growth in him just by saying, okay, do this, okay, don't do that. And that's what our kids need. They need to be responsible for somebody else. It's very important. Name.
And I really think that even our kids who are growing up in violent circumstances, and even our kids who perpetrate violence on others, there's still a compassionate part of them on some level. Is just being able to tap into that and helping them to know that they are wanted by the sacred, if no one else, you know. But obviously there are other people who want them, but I'm saying if they feel that, helping them to get back to the original. That's right. The original, what I call of when you were created, that original feeling that you felt, you know, when you were in your mother's womb or coming out. Because I believe the sacred speaks to us through all those places. So if we could just go back to that place of remembering the voice that was there. Not all the other crap.
It's in all of us.
That was there.
And it's in them because they want to protect other people. And that gets them in trouble sometimes. But part of that is, I want to protect this person who's being bullied at school. I want to protect my younger sibling from whatever's going on at home or in the world. And so that just gives them a boost in their self-esteem to be able to say, I'm accountable to look and walk a certain way because so-and-so is watching me.
Good.
Yeah. The next acronym is NAMED, and NAMED stands for identity. Who are you? Who really are you? And some of the workshops facilitators, they get really deep into who are you. We get into names, for instance, what's your name? And they would say, my name is Turlin. Well, what were your parents thinking when they named you? Is it a family name? That name is important if it's a family name. If you were named after someone in the Bible, that name is important. If you were named after someone that your family admired, those names, your name is important. And you don't want to be called out of your name, is what we say. Nobody wants to be called out of their name. So how does that make you feel when someone calls you out of your name? They call you something that you know you're not. And so they really dissect what that identity is.
So I have to ask this. Do you all get into the discussion of them saying the N-word all the time and how that...
We have discussed that on countless occasions. Not even, I mean, all the time, not even in that one workshop. Absolutely. And they know, they always say, oh yeah, we know better. We know better. And so it's wonderful to see them just, it's, you know, like a group of 12 to 15 young men talking through this, because usually, you know, in pockets, they'll hear it or they'll hear someone preach it to them. You know, you shouldn't use that word. But for them to actually delve into it and talk about it themselves and come up with an answer, just makes them more responsible for that name.
Yes, and I think for them to know that even if you think you're using it and you're using it playfully, because we'll say, well, I can say it in my own community. It's still getting into your very essence. I had an incident when I worked in the high school, and I was working with a group of Black and Latino boys, and they were using the word, and I said, you really shouldn't use the word. It was a group. And, I said, how would you feel if I looked at Mr. So-and-so and I said, please, just like that, and please, you know what I'm saying. So this one young man put this look on his face, and because they don't expect that I would use it. So another person who was there helping me run the group said, why did you put that look on your face when Dr. Curry Avery used the word? And he said, because she looks civilized. And I said, well, are you civilized? And he shook his head, no.
My goodness.
And I said, that's my point exactly.
Yes.
Because now you're owning the word and you're putting a meaning to it, and even unconsciously, you're saying certain people should use it and certain people shouldn't. Don't use it anymore.
My goodness.
And I have had people, even when I've done groups with even adults, and I tell that story, I've had grown men who use it all the time will say, I'm not using that word anymore.
My goodness. Absolutely.
So there's a lot in a name. So
a lot in a name. My goodness. Thankful. We talk a lot about gratitude in girls' groups and in women's groups. We're all about our gratitude journals, so forth and so on. Boys don't get that opportunity. Boys never get that opportunity. And I don't know why. I think it's such a touchy-feely term that we equate it with young women and women. But we talk about gratitude in thankfulness. And we have them. What are you thankful for? And I tell you, I've seen mothers and fathers crying because after the class of Wanted, we have a celebration. And during that celebration, we ask the boys, I keep the materials for them because of course they will lose them. And I say, here, you're going to tell all of us, your parents, community members, everyone who shows up for the celebration, what you're thankful for. And I've spoken to several of the mothers that says, I never heard that from him before. And they smile, the boys, they smile and they get gushy when they're saying, I'm thankful for my mom. I
don't want her to know it, but I really am
But they have these beaming smiles, and it goes to show you that boys are grateful for things. They're thankful to be where they are. Even the ones who have virtually nothing can be thankful for something. And it's important, I think, to show them that. Empowered. And we all know what empowered means. How are you empowered? What are your goals? How do we meet these goals? How do you stay empowered to meet your goals? Who we have them, and it's basically I bring my coaching background into it for the facilitators, because I want to make sure that they don't miss this part. Name 10 things. Put these down. What are your goals? How are you going to reach them? Who's going to empower you besides yourself and God? Name 10 people who are going to empower you. Those are the 10 people. Name those friends who are going to empower you and not work against you.
Right, because if they're going to work against you, you don't need them.
You don't need them at all.
Life. Yeah.
And even, thinking about my own children, my youngest son, again, is into anime. I know nothing about anime. Nothing. He's so into it. He's a cartoonist. He draws it. He lives, eats, and breathes it. He's trying to learn Japanese by himself right now. And I empower him. I don't know anything about it at all. But I say, okay, let's go on the internet and let's go to the newspaper and get comic strips and see what they're doing and who are your favorite anime. And this is what parents and children can do for each other. And so the youth at the Wanted Project learn also to empower each other. They know each other's gifts. So the artists are like, yo, man, what did you know, draw today? Let me see it. You know, it's the cutest thing. Especially, you know, if you have a 12-year-old telling another 12-year-old, well, let me see your homework, because you said you were going to get an A.
Oh, well, that's fabulous.
Yeah,
that's fabulous.
Great. I love these young men. Over 65 have come through the program so far.
So let me just ask you, I know that the facilitators who are doing that week's or month's topic are there, but do you go to each?
Oh, I'm there for each and every one.
So you're sitting there while they're...
I'm the first 2 years I used to sit way in the back, because I didn't want them to feel like, especially when my son was going through the program, like, oh, there's a woman, you know, lurking, and she's going to tell my mom or whatever. And then afterwards, it was just like, oh, please, they could care less. I'm in and out upstairs doing, you know, brochures and other things like that. But, and I love for parents sometimes to come and sit in, especially the male parents. And
I think that's crucial, because I think they need to know how their behavior impacts their children.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And I think that many of our adult men of color need to know that they are wanted as well, because they carry it with them. And, you know, understandably, there's a certain way that they have to talk to our youth about what you do when you go out in terms of safety and all of those things. That is important that they do that, but it's also important that they learn to embrace them and let them know that they are wanted and worthy, of course. But tell us about the D.
Determined. How are you going to get it done? Basically, you know, is the implementation of, and it's not only the implementation, it's the don't give up part. You know, you have these goals. What do you want to do in life? If it's college, if it's a trade school, if it's going straight to work, okay, great. But how are you going to do it? You have to stay determined in this world. And you said it. These acronyms fit everything. I have mothers of girl children. When are you going to start the Wanted Project for girls?
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, okay, you know. I know it's needed, and I've even done this work, Wanted, with grown women, and it has been amazing.
It's needed. It is
so
needed. And we know that in the work that we do with women, that it is profound when you start working with women and they, you know, recognize who they are and how they really can tap into their fullest potential. I wanted to ask you, in terms of the work that you do with them, what do you do around not retaliating when it comes to violent situations? I am sure that there are times that young men that maybe who have had beefs with one another end up in the same program. So what do you do? What do you do?
That's interesting. You're right. And within Valley Stream, there are 3 high schools, and so with 3 high schools, there comes this rivalry, and so we've had students within the same class coming from different high schools, and so you know it might start off the first couple of classes. You know, they're grouping. And then it could be a little bit of showing off as well to, you know, who's who, and I play football and I do this better kind of thing. But literally I would say by named, which is only 3 classes in, these boys are almost a family. I mean, I hesitate to say family because that's but they're bonded. They're bonded in this program. And they know each other well enough so when they're out on the street, in fact, in my oldest son's class, the one who was injured, we had different kids from different schools. And when they're out, they identify each other. Hey, What's up?
Right.
And so they're with their group of friends, they're with their group of friends.
Yes.
And so that brought those two groups of
Sure.
friends together. And so, you know, we've had people come in to talk about bullying, so forth and so on. So there's the formal lesson of what to do when you're bullied, how to stick up for your friend without getting into trouble, telling the teacher or the parent, something like that. But then you have this whole informal thing going on where they're introducing each other. And we have a couple of boys who come in from Queens, New York. And so they're grafted in. So it's quite amazing. And a lot of it is not...
So how do you get into the program? How do...
The program is free. Number one, we put out advertisements, but most of the people are coming because the parents and the youth invite them. Okay. And it's really amazing and disconcerting sometimes because one semester we had 6 enrolled. So I'm planning a budget for 6. That includes food, a workshop facilitator, so forth and so on. The first day, 18 showed up.
Wow.
18.
Well, that shows you that there's a need.
It's working, it's great, and then so we had to say, oh, 18, and revamp the budget, so forth and so on. So the kids are telling about the program. They get their t-shirts at the celebration, the Wanted Project, and on the back it says, I am worthy, accountable, blah, blah, blah. Yes. They wear them. I went up to my son's school one time and I saw a youth from the program wearing it to school. Good. And when I saw that, I said, oh boy, we're good. Yeah. We're doing something here.
Well, Casey, we would love to hear more about it, but I want to move us into the second half because I want to talk about how do we recover when trauma happens. But before we do that, I also want you to tell our viewing audience how they can get in touch with you about the Wanted Project. Yes. But the second thing that I want you to be sure to tell our viewing audience is, I heard you say that you budgeted for 6, but 18 folks came, and these kids come free. Well, free isn't free for you.
It is not free for us.
So how can people donate to your project? And I know you've had some amazing experiences where God has really blessed you with people who have just heard about this and have just decided, I'm going to donate money to this.
Absolutely. Donations can go to thewantedproject.org. There's a link on our website to make donations. We would love cash donations. We'll take food. We'll take workshop facilitators who we don't have to pay for. We'll take anything because we really want this to grow. And you mentioned at the beginning, we have in Africa, we have a Ghana affiliate for the Wanted Project. We also have people in Connecticut, further up in Hereford, and an organization in Atlanta who wants to do a Wanted Project. So also, getting in touch with us to let us know if you want to start, and we'll help you start your own Wanted Project wherever you are.
I think that's amazing. Yeah. That's fantastic to be able to do that.
We want it everywhere. I mean, it's been so successful in Valley Stream, and in Ghana, it was at a juvenile detention center. So the pictures that we have, we couldn't get the faces, but we got the pictures from behind of these boys who went through this program. And Afua is her name, is the person who is getting the mentors in and directing the program in Ghana. And she said it was unbelievable. They want her to come back with the Wanted Project again.
So what I want to say to you as our viewers, that if you want to see our young men of color believing in themselves and doing something different than the world says that they are doing, we know that we have plenty of smart, young, Black, African American, Asian, Latino. I mean, we know that they are out there and we know that they're doing amazing things, but we also know that there are youth who have been gravely impacted by violence and gravely impacted about what the world says about them. If you want your youth to know who they are, that they are wanted, I ask that you go to thewantedproject.org and Think about starting one in your neighborhood and in your region. And if you need information about it, Kymberley Clemons-Jones can provide that to you. But we want to move into the second half of our show because as you heard her talking about, this is a mom seeing her son bleeding profusely and he has to go to the hospital. And to sit there with your child, she didn't talk about that experience, but to sit there with your child and see your child having to go through surgery is not an easy process. But she didn't stay in a place of anger. And she heard God speaking to her about what was to come out of this. A lot has come out of it, not just the Wanted Project. She is a restoration life coach as well. So one of the things that Casey does is that she helps women to be restored, to be healed from whatever events that have happened in their lives. As a matter of fact, she's written a book called Cured, but Not Healed, because it is important for us to know that just because you decide that I'm not going to think about it anymore, I'm not going to deal with it, it does not mean that you are healed from it. So we do want to talk with Casey during the second half about you as a mom,
Yes,
you know, healing from this process. And I know that, you know, Susan will weigh in too as well during the second half of the show because we do a lot of work with women, but just in terms of talking about the process.
So, you know, my voice always, all these years later, starts to shake when I talk about my son's assault and when he came through the door. Literally, I was about to take off my clothes from a work day and the door bangs open and I thought someone was breaking into our house. And when he came running in, what I didn't tell you is that literally 15 minutes or right after, it took about 15 minutes for him to calm down and tell me the story of what happened. Then the story started changing. He started guessing at what had happened, and I didn't know what was going on. Come to find out, he suffered a concussion, and it was all going away. And so I was thankful that I was there to hear the story. So it was just devastating to me to, first of all, see all of the blood and all of his anger and also him talking so badly about himself, like I should have known better. He had earphones in his ears. Another thing we teach Wanted Project is safety. When you're in the neighborhood and you're walking, he had just come from a track meet, won the 100-meter race, the 200-meter race. Just called his father to ask if he could, when he came home, if they could go to Cold Stones to celebrate the wins. And then he gets attacked. So he didn't remember any of that. So, you know, through the process of him getting to the hospital, I'm sitting there really not believing anything that's going on. But after everything was over, I was able to pinpoint what kept me together. And I call them the 3 PPs. The first is prayer power. The second is people power. And the third is purpose power. Prayer power, of course, is going within, praying to the sacred, to the divine. And even in order to just keep you calm, right? Because I could have never, I'm pretty good in crisis situations and I fall apart later, but I never fell apart through this. And I believe it was because I went inside and I talked to the Creator, and because I knew I needed to be led through this situation.
Well, you know, that's one of the things that Susan and I were talking about in one of our shows. If you have a firm foundation, if you have a relationship with whatever your spiritual guide is, it shows up in particular during those times of need. Yes. If you don't have it and you're just grasping in the wind at whatever your spirituality is, because people always want to say I'm spiritual, not religious, and I get that. But you need to have something
Yes.
that you can fall back on. And so you did what you immediately would do in any circumstances, that you went in
Yes.
and you connected.
Yes.
And that helped to sustain you.
And it did, because with all that was going on and the police asking questions and my son forgetting the story, and I said, well, was he embellishing? Why was he forgetting the story? And like, it went from 5 to 1. It was closer to his school because he was filling in the blanks, and of course he was doing it wrong. And so I told the police officers the first story, and I just had faith that that was what happened. And it turns out that is what happened. The end of this is literally 2 months after my son was back home. He's sitting in youth ministry at our house. He's on his cell phone. He's looking at something while he's supposed to be paying attention.
Ministry.
Yeah. And I said, Jason, you know better. And he says, Mom, you have to see this. And so he takes me in the other room, and he shows me a video that his friend sent to him from his home surveillance camera, took a picture of his home surveillance camera, and actually saw my son walking through our church parking lot, going off camera. Thank God, off camera. I told him, I don't know if I could see this. This is not the actual attack. Yeah. But literally, he comes through the parking lot, around the corner, off camera, and then you see the youth. And it was very predatorial. Yeah. Very predatorial. I still have
that's still, but still as a mom, that must have just been devastating.
And there were some hanging back, and then the one comes and bends down, and I know that was the brick that they picked up from the neighbor's yard. Yeah.
So now, as a mom, you're So tell me about anger. Did that creep up at all? I know you had your 3 Ps.
Yeah. Anger had to have crept up. It was less anger and more profound sadness, I think. My husband was angry.
Yes, because I was going to ask you about that. Yes.
But for me, it was just profound sadness. One, that my son had to go through this. 2, that any of our sons, because our house was always the place where all the sons met anyway. And then 3, that there was somebody out there, these kids that were out there and their parents, that might have to deal with the opposite side of being a victim, but being a perpetrator. And I don't think I had time for anger.
So
not that kind, not that
go
out and get them kind.
And that worked for you in terms of just helping you towards your healing.
Yes.
But I want us, because I know we're going to run out of time soon, but talk to us then about your other 2 Ps.
Yes.
And I really want you to tell us how you use that to help women in particular, because your work is really dealing with women. And I know in your book you really talk about having that deep faith journey as well. So talk to us a little bit about the other 2.
So the second is people power, and that's you're shared community. Our church rallied around us. All of Jason's friends, my oldest son, rallied around us. People came, and here's the thing, with ministers, and you probably know this as you were a pastor, people think you have it all together. They don't know how to minister to you. I've had this for a long time.
Exactly.
And so they're usually very standoffish. And people got past that. And even there was a nurse, her name was Joan, I have to say her name, and at this hospital, who knew somehow that both my husband and I were in ministry. And she came up to me and she says, I know you're a pastor, but you're in need now.
Amen.
Let it go.
Yes.
And I wrote about her in one of my books. And I can tear up right now.
Yes.
Because just the words that I needed to hear. And so sometimes we do need to step back from our persona and who we have to be for other people and be able to grieve. People power. Get those support networks around you. And this is what I tell women. I mean, it's all about your personal relationship with the divine, support networks. And then the last is really built out of, and it goes in a circle really for me, is your divine purpose, your purpose power. My purpose power, not, you know, I feel like I've been doing this work forever, but it really grew out of this tragedy for my son. And my son's going to have his own story, right? He's going to have his own, you know, own purpose power from this story. But mine was to continue on working with women and working with our children in general. Because mothers, oh boy, we're wanted. We're wanted by society to be, do, everything. Oh my goodness. And sometimes even mother and father, unfortunately. And so we need to know that we need each other, we need God.
So you just said something that was very interesting though, because you said your son is going to have his own purpose power, which he will.
Yes.
But a part of that now has been shaped with how you handled the situation.
True. I think about that all the time.
And so part of it that's important for us to know as women, that what we do matters.
Right.
And you handled it differently, I'm sure, than your husband handled it. So, so now he's seen two different ways of handling that, and what that taught him.
You know, my husband is just a wonderful man. He took my lead, and he says that. Because he said being a man, all he wanted to do was go out and find who did it and hurt them. He would have never done that. He's a pussycat. However,
don't say that on public TV.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, he's my pussycat.
He's
very
kind.
He's
very kind,
and spirited, and just loving. And so he would have never done that. But that was what he wanted to do, and he took my lead, which in any marriage, that's a great thing when we can exchange those roles of taking leads. And so did a lot of other people, because, you know, someone asked me if one of the boys who showed up in, who attacked your son, what if he shows up in your program? And I said, that's who the program is for. He needs to come. And quite frankly, there was one youth that really had a hard time, only one that really had a hard time coming through the program. And he was from that area, and I often wondered if it was, if he knew something about it. And it's for them, it's for all of them. On each side of that equation, because any amount of time it could be the opposite. In one bad mistake, it could be the opposite. You know, my son on the attacker side, or vice versa. It just there's too much out there that's trying to pull them in, and so yeah.
So I know that you're a minister and you're a coach, and you deal with these women all the time around these issues, and you're always ministering to other people. But tell us about the times when that it's been difficult through this process. You know, I think that sometimes as healers, when we're talking, and people do think that we have it all together, and that you're always in control, and that you're never hurting, and you're never this and that. And part of that is our own portrayal. But there must have been some times through this that were very challenging. So how do you help women to get through those challenging times and not beat themselves up for having a moment where it feels not good and you're wondering, God, what on earth are you doing? Because we do go through asking God about that.
I'm very transparent with my clients, with my members. They know of some ordeals that I've been through. I think one is, especially when you're coaching or in the leadership position, really is up to you to be the person who says, been there, done that, I got through it, maybe I can help you too. And so with this incident, I did throw myself into work, but then there was a time where I told myself, cognitively, I said, okay, I'm doing a little too well. I know something's brewing in there.
Right.
And so I took about 2 or 3 months, well, actually it was probably a whole summer, and just let myself cry and weep and get angry.
Yes.
But my anger was, it was more so about, what are we gonna do? This is terrible. Our kids can't go through this. Again, that profound, like, sorrow. And so I let myself cry and just take time off to do nothing other than take that time off. You know, summers from the church. So that was a good time for me to just say, I can't do anymore. I'm tired.
The church actually let you take off?
They did. Not the whole summer, no. But for a lot good of summer. Good portion.
But I think, you know, for me, what you're saying is so critical, and I think it's critical for a number of reasons, because one, and I know pastors are very guilty of doing this, and church folk are very guilty of doing this. When something happens, you know, we say all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord, and blah, blah, blah. And that is true. Something good came out of this situation, and God did not cause this situation to happen, because people also say, well, you know, God, no. We do things because we choose to do those things. But again, even though something good came out of the situation, what we need to know and to understand that it's important that we take time to heal.
Yes.
So we can use the scriptures, or we can use whatever sacred text that we have to help us in the healing. But we can weep, and we can wail, and we can mourn, and it's perfectly fine. One of the things that's very frustrating to me is that when people say, oh, you should be over that by now.
No.
You might be cured, but not healed.
Not healed, not healed.
So it really is important for us to take that time for ourselves. I think it's important for us to model that as healers, as ministers. It's important for us to say no. And it's not easy, because I think for women, you know, we just have to keep it going. My girlfriend said something to me the other day. She was asking me about a situation, because I just kind of made a statement to her and just kept moving. And she was thinking about it later, and she said, you know, I was thinking about you, Terrell, and are you okay? And I said, well, no, actually I'm not okay, but, you know, it's life, it's what I have to deal with, blah, blah, blah. And she said, can you just let go for just a minute? Can you just? But, you know, I think at the time that she was asking me, first of all, her husband was around, so I really didn't want to engage in a conversation with her husband around. But the other thing is really about, okay, opening yourself up to be vulnerable in that moment. Do you feel like bringing it up in that moment?
Right.
And sometimes you just got to do it, because it's important. Because if people do not see you, if people see you always in control, then of course what they're going to do is bring their problems to you, and they don't ever have to really ask you how you're doing. So I'm thankful that you took that time off, and that you were able to set those boundaries with the church to say, because this happened to me, and you know that it happened to me, this is what I need. I think it's also important for us to be able to tell our partners, this is what I need. To tell our children,
absolutely,
this is what I need, because they're always wanting something from us, and I think that that's really important. So any final thoughts that you would say, though, for women, or even, I know we talked in the first half about our youth, but what would be your final thoughts to women?
Again, for women, it is the 3 PPs. It's the prayer power. Go inside, get away from all that is targeting you. Go inside, ask that divine, the Creator, what it is, what are your next steps? And the divine will answer, always answers. And then the second, of course, is people power. Have those support networks. I didn't say that I had a coach. I had a coach, a spiritual coach, who was able to help me get through that situation. And I had a really good friend who I could sob and cry and so forth, and my husband, who just helped all of us get it together, you know, keep it together. And then, you know, your divine purpose. It's so important that we all know the direction that the divine wants us to go in. And so when you can kind of throw yourself into that, it's a good thing.
So for the Wanted Project, people can get in touch with you with the
Yes.
wantedproject.org. But with your Restored Life, because I know that you're also a life coach, you do so much. How can people get in touch with you if a woman wants to come to you and work with you around this?
My website is restorationlifecoach.com, and you can get in touch with me right through the website.
Okay, and it doesn't have to be a traumatic experience.
Oh, not
to
at
have
all,
happened,
not at all.
Because as women, there are lots of things.
I'm
that
really
we
good with
experience.
life balance and cutting things out. So,
Yes. So we want to thank Kymberley Clemons-Jones for joining us today. We have been richly, richly blessed, and we are really excited about your project. We want to invite you to share this information with those in your community, in your regions, and beyond, because it is so important to let our young men know that they are wanted. If you'd like more information about us at Sacred Intelligence, I invite you to contact us at info@sacredintelligence.com. As always, we thank you so much for watching the show, and we ask that you will go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel and pass it along to others. Until next time, be blessed.